Today I'm going to tell you about a toy line you probably forgot or you just don't remember the name of. In the late 70s, there seemed to be a rash of small die-cast action figure robots. The most famous of these are Micronauts. They came from Japan and imported to the US by Mego. However, the one I'm talking about that people seem to forget was the ones released by Z Toys called Adventure of Metal Man. That's a great name for a toy line, although I think Metal Men would have sounded better. Unlike most action figure lines that give you somewhat of a backstory, Metal Man had no story. It was up to you, the kid, to provide your own story. Did they come from outer space to help the US fight with Russia? Did they dig themselves out of the hollow earth to fight corporate America? Well, that was all up to you. There were different types of metal men in this line. There were police figures, military figures, spacemen. There was ones that worked for NASA and more. Sears would even release a box set so kids could get more than just one at a time. There was also a helicopter for your Metal Man, a NASA rocket, and the coolest of them all, Metal Man's UFO. Now I'm going to tell you how I know about the Adventures of Metal Man. In fact, this was probably not in the 70s, but the early 80s. I'm going to guess around 1981, 1982, maybe a little earlier than that, because I remember going to the store, Sears. Sears sold toys. Do you remember that? At least around Christmas time, my Sears did. I can remember seeing the Indiana Jones from Kenner there and other things. But this was my birthday, so September, let's say 1981 for the sake of argument, I got to go to the mall and Sears to get a toy. And I wanted a Star Wars toy, and I can remember I wanted one from The Empire Strikes Back. I don't know why I went to Sears to get the toy, because there was a KB toy or a Toyland or something at the mall I could have went to, but no, I had to go to Sears at the mall. Again, I'm not really sure why, and they had a few Star Wars figures, but they had everything I already had and didn't have a stormtrooper, so I wasn't trying to build an army or anything. I couldn't use another Lobot. I couldn't use another Cloud Car Pilot. Hey, they already got my money twice for that because of the ship. If there was any toy that should have came with a free action figure, it's the Cloud Car. But let's get back to talking about these figures. I can remember them at Sears, and I don't remember vaguely too much about them. I just remember I bought it because I had to get a toy. Well, I didn't have to get a toy, but you know how you're a kid. Your parents say, let's go buy you something at Sears. You don't say no thanks. You say, yay, Sears!
Put on your Sunday best, kids. We're going to Sears.
We were probably there looking at refrigerators or something. Remember that day you go to Sears and look at refrigerators and the TV? It was like you were on a strange another planet. The TVs, the refrigerators, everything was so much better than the ones you had at home. I would just open the fridge and look at it, but I'm rambling here. I got one of the figures, and I can't remember which one. I think he was blue. I could be wrong, but I can remember getting one of these die-cast figures, and I played with it. I had a die-cast Shogun Warrior. My brother had a big plastic Shogun Warrior, but this is the closest I could get. I had one of the Shogun Warriors at metal. So Metal Man and the Shogun Warrior, well, they became best friends, you could say. And they played in the Cantina playset. They played along in my Hoth attack base. They played around with my Star Wars figures. They didn't get to play with He-Man. They just didn't fit in with He-Man. But the Adventures of Metal Man, he did get to ride around the Millennium Falcon. I crammed him into a land speeder and probably shoved him into the battery compartment on an X-Wing. I can't sit here and tell you I had a lot of fun with this thing because I only had one. I didn't know about the UFO. I would have loved to have that. But I do remember playing with it, and for years I would scratch my head and say, what was that? I convinced myself it was a Micronaut. But I knew I had Micronauts, and I knew this didn't really look like Micronauts. And I got older, I started thinking it was a THX 1138 line. They kind of have that feel of a THX 1138. Remember that movie? But then in the 90s, when I started getting into collecting toys, reading about old toys and everything, I would come across some of these toys at toy shows and magazines, and I would say that was it. The Adventures of Metal Man. And I don't know if you had them. I don't know if you knew about them. But don't you just love them looking at them? They just scream 70s, and they scream die-cast toys. They just scream old toys, and I don't know about you, but I love old toys. And like I said, I think people grew up with these, and they just don't remember the name of them. The line did last for about 3 years, and probably in stores longer than that, because I know I bought them in the early 80s, long after they stopped being produced. Today, you can find them mostly loose on the secondary market for around $20, sometimes less than that. Some of them on a card might run you a little bit more. And they're really metal men. I mean, these things are heavy die-cast metal. I still don't get why toy companies felt it was good to give kids a toy that could rust if you left them outside, or one that could fracture your sister's skull if you threw it at her head. But they did. There were a lot of die-cast figures released in the 70s and early 80s. If you're out there at a toy show somewhere and you see a Metal Man, add it to your collection. Once you have one, I'll bet you'll want more. You'll definitely want that UFO. I know I do. But this has been a look at the Adventures of Metal Man by Z Toys. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, thumb up, subscribe to the channel, and we'll talk again.
Hey, Junkman channel popping though. Thank you, sir, for that unsolicited testimony.